Hello, I'm Phelim Scoop.
And I'm Ann Phelim.
And welcome to the Ann Phelim Scoop. It's week 69, that's 1 year, 4 months, and 1 week since the 2-week to flatten the curve lockdown. And many places are still in a lockdown, so we know what the government, how to trust the government going forward. And it is another anniversary, isn't it, Anne?
It's 5 weeks since it was revealed that Hunter Biden used the N word. And we're still waiting for the mainstream media to report on that.
Yes, I think we will be waiting. So let's talk about what's on the show today. First of all, we have to solve this mystery. Where is Anne? Let's just say she's in a not so secret location in Ireland, working on a rather secret project. Question, is it okay to deceive your wife? Or to put it another way, where is Top Cat? My hell week with a cat and his 9 lives.
And according to arts experts, Hunter Biden's art is more valuable than a Picasso. And in other arts news, the left never sleeps when pushing climate propaganda. We're going to look at the latest installation in Madison Square Park in New York.
Yes, I'm sure it's full of art, indeed. So yes, and apparently we're told all the time, news outlets are dying, journalists are losing jobs. And I say that's wonderful, especially when you look at the wusses that have the jobs. They basically don't deserve these jobs anyway. So we're going to be looking at the latest wussification of journalism. And
we have more news, from Malcolm Arswell, the great thinker and poseur who proves what a total arse he actually is.
Malcolm Arswell, yes, indeed. As you might know, Malcolm Gladwell. So you're in Ireland, Anne. What's happening in Ireland?
And we have a snapshot from Ireland, the biggest story in Ireland that is shockingly not the biggest story in Ireland, and some other stories. And we also have a recipe. Well, actually, this week it's not going to be a recipe, it's going to be a drink. Apparently, according to all the advertising for decades now, Guinness is good for you. We bring you the surprising truth about that claim. But first, Phelim, you have to ask the question, where am I? So I am in a not so secret location. I am in Ireland. I'm in Mullaghmore in the northwest of Ireland. And we'll talk more about that later. But yes, I am. And since I left, and I'm on a top secret mission doing a secret project, which we can talk about in the months to come.
Yes.
But when I was I literally hadn't left the house when all hell broke loose.
Well, first of all, we have to tell people that given that it's Ireland, and it's so progressive, Ireland, so progressive. Hey, they've got gay marriage and abortion, so progressive, but they ain't got proper Wi-Fi. So we've been trying all morning to get Anne's picture up, but every time we do, everything freezes. So tell us how Ireland's looking now.
Well, funny enough, it's apparently all the news here is that this week we're going to have a heat wave, apparently caused by some kind of storm going on in the US. That's going to push a high ridge of pressure or whatever here in a good way. So everyone is very, very excited. So they're in lockdown here in Ireland.
First of all, let's have a look at Mullaghmore where you are. Let's play some footage that a friend of ours took, basically from not far from our house, just beside our house. The drone takes off from beside our house, I believe. And let's have a look at that footage of the Mullaghmore, the peninsula where you are that sticks out into the Atlantic Ocean. Let's watch that now.
So gorgeous, as people can see there, yes. As you look at that footage, you can see, this is a peninsula sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean, extraordinarily gorgeous. It really is. And even the people who are living here spend every day saying, isn't it just gorgeous? One of the problems with the location geographically is that you get a lot of rain, you get a lot of grey skies. But the thing that I think is very unusual here is that the light, it never stops changing. So unlike LA, where you got these blue skies that are kind of constant, here, every 5 minutes, something new happens. So it kind of keeps it very entertaining. It could rain every 5 to 10 minutes. It starts raining, then the sun comes out, then it doesn't come out. And then the other thing that's unusual about being here right now, and we're going to put up a couple of photographs now that you'll see that I took the night I arrived. And those photographs that you're looking at right now, it's sunset and it's 10:15 at night. And even when the sun does set, it never gets fully dark. So it's very, very bright, and then it's bright again just after 4 in the morning. So it's kind of that northern situation, but really gorgeous, But it does create difficulties for sleep. because it basically really never gets fully dark. And just on the COVID kind of thing, so, you know, they've really never completely emerged from COVID. As I think we've said before, Ireland has the longest lockdown in Europe, and they're super proud of that, really, really happy about that. So you have people here who are forced to eat outdoors. All the meals are outdoors. The pubs are all closed unless they have, you know, an outdoor space, which means, you know, you have people, and you'll see some footage that I took a couple of days ago, you know, basically pouring rain, you know, and so people will be out. The meal will just have arrived on the table. There'll be a bit of an umbrella, but you're no good at all, and the pouring rain, and it's kind of miserable.
I think the reason they like the lockdown is so much is because so much of Ireland is we've got to be better than Britain. We've got to be better than England, you know. And England had a long lockdown, so the Irish are going, well, we're better than them. They're reckless and careless. And of course, you've been unfortunate enough to be there during the kind of the purge, as I, you know, so the kind of the biannual purge or the annual purge of anti-Englishness when England is doing well in the competition or for Brexit. So you've just endured the Euros where England was in the final, and an awful lot of Irish people were supporting Italy and buying Italian jerseys and being really proud of that.
It's just to explain to people. So football, so soccer, the British game, soccer, the beautiful game, they had their final of the European Cup. The 2020 European Cup was played this last week here, and you had a situation where when I was going down into the village here, small village here, you had people, I could hear them all talking, saying, you know, oh God, we just really want Italy to win. And this is not because they have relatives in Italy or that they're connected with Italy in any. And, you know, I definitely spoke up and said to people, oh, well, my mother and father both had great time for the English and love the English. But and it was funny, you know, the night of the actual game, I stayed up at the house on my own here with my friends. And then down in the pubs, I know from people who were there, they said that people were cheering and going crazy for the Italians. And I said to someone today, it's really good I wasn't there, because I probably would have got into a bit of an argument with the little argument. You've seen me do that before, Phelim.
And it's not even, by the way, it's not that they hate the English, actually, funny enough. I think they're all over that. By the way, where was all this hatred of the English when up in Northern Ireland, we were actually enduring the English for 80 years. I mean, this is hilarious. I think there is a bit of this that they, you know, Southern Ireland abandoned Northern Ireland to the British in 1920, and it's kind of some kind of way of, it's both an inferiority complex to the mother country, so to speak, and also it's kind of, well, we shouldn't have left the North British, but we'll prove we really are nationalist and Republican by being anti-English, and it's pathetic, really, actually. So Anne left last Sunday, I believe. Yes, left last Sunday. Top Cat decided on Monday that he would go outside because he's an indoor-outdoor cat. And Top Cat did not.
Can I interrupt you, Phelim, and say that the other thing that happened prior to that was that when we left the driveway, I said to you jokingly, Top Cat had come out and was standing looking at the car. And I jokingly said to you, oh, he's really annoyed, I'm leaving. Yes. Then we got into the car and I said to you, sure, I'm only joking, Phelim. I don't think that cat knows anything about who's coming or going. Then when I got to the airport, you sent me a video. Can we share that video of what the cat did once we drove out? Do you remember the noise he made?
On Monday night, he did not come back, and which is not very, very unusual. It only ever happened once before. They normally come in the evening for food before dark, and then all day Tuesday he did not come back, and then Tuesday night he did not come back. But in this time you were phoning and we were talking, and you were saying, "How are the cats?" And I was going, "Oh, they're fine. They're fine. No, everything's good. Don't worry." And Anne did not notice. My voice got very high every time I talked to her. So then I went out, and it's I tell you, it's the walk of sadness, walking around your neighborhood with posters of your missing cat. It's very sad. Posters, cat missing, and I will put up that poster. The question is, so there I was, like, really miserable, putting up these posters in the area, And then I come back, and who is walking in through the cat flap? Only Mr. Top Cat. And I lift him up and give him a hug, and then I put him down, and then I notice that his front left paw is like, and I would use the word dangling, like
Oh God,
dangling, like it's just Mr. Floppy. It is just.
Oh God.
So anyway, Mr. Top Cat has a badly broken leg after being away for 48 hours, and no one knows how he got it. They think maybe he was hit by a car because he's got, as they said, the vet said, abrasions on his chin. Then when they shaved off or looked a bit closer, they think they might have saw bite marks. So they don't know what really happened to him. It must be quite the animal if they broke his leg. So I'm possibly going with the car theory, because he was just so upset that he left the man. He just threw himself in front of the car.
Oh God. Yeah. This is just so bad. So then you had to go to the vet and you had to make a choice between spending an enormous amount.
No, I didn't make it. No, I had to create the illusion of choice.
You had to create the illusion of choice, but they did offer you some choices, like leaving the cat behind forever, or having the cat with a permanent limp. This is what you told me, Phelim. You said the three choices were.
That was my Twitter poll. They were asking for an enormous sum of money to fix his broken leg. An enormous sum of money.
This is not money we have. Let's just be honest about that.
Yes. So they were looking for $4,700 to repair his legs. God.
Yes.
And I said to the lady who told me that, I said, sorry, can we reduce that bill somewhat? And she went off and says, no, we can't. And I said, well, I can't afford that. I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't afford that operation. So and I really did, I kind of implied I was just going to leave him with a broken leg, even though I wouldn't have left him with a broken leg. And she came back and said, the vet, I think they fell in love with Top Cat too. He's kind of nice.
Oh, you didn't tell me this bit.
She said, we're going to take $2,000 off the bill. It's been quite the week. I went from feeling a complete failure because I had one job, and that was look after the cat. And then it's the walk of misery putting up the posters. Then he comes back, then we get him solved. And now he's hobbling around the house. But hopefully that's going to be the end of that. I did do a rather naughty thing. I did put up, I thought I'd never done a Twitter poll before. And I thought I can do a Twitter poll. I said, my cat's bill is $4,700. And which option should I take? Pay the bill, euthanize the cat. C, I can't remember what C was, and then D was ask him to keep him with a small limp, do a smaller operation, keep a small limp, so he can't jump on fences. I got quite a good response. I got something like 20 or 30 responses and votes and all. One or two people wanted to euthanize him, terrible. But then people didn't get the joke, and people got rather upset with it, so I ended up deleting the Twitter poll. I was joking. I would never do that. I would never do that. So enough of Top Cat. Let's have a
enough of that. I want to talk about a great story. I mean, we've talked about Hunter Biden's art before, but Hunter Biden has decided he's an artist, and his art, which is on paper and is done by some kind of blowing paint onto paper, is going to be seeking prices of up to $500,000. So this created an ethical dilemma.
That would pay for a lot of Top Cat operations.
Yes, exactly.
We should get Top Cat in the art world.
Yeah. So basically, so the White House were working on, a plan for how would this be dealt with and how would they deal with this to avoid any suggestion of an ethical difficulties. And here's what they came up with, and I'm quoting, this is great from the Wall Street Journal. The great solution that the White House came up with was keep everything secret. Yeah, for real. That's the plan. Just keep everything secret. So the New York Gallery, this is me quoting from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Gallery hosting the sale, media reports say, will refuse suspicious offers, including those over list price. The names of the buyers and bidders will be kept confidential, even from Hunter. As the paintings sell, apparently, hundreds of thousands of dollars will simply appear in his bank account, and neither he nor the public will know where it came from. And then the Wall Street Journal is saying, you don't feel reassured. Sources in the art world say the prices being floated are from $75,000 to $500,000. And I think the context for this story this week, which you probably know about, Phelim, is the fact that a Picasso was discovered in someone's attic the other day in the States, and it is sold for, I think it's 120 or 150,000 dollars for 150 for a Picasso. So the question, anyway, so the big question is, and I think this is very funny, that the White House, as many of the listeners and viewers know, they've constantly said they have established the highest ethical standards of any administration in American history.
What's to stop him putting it on his Instagram page or issuing a press release? The businessman who buys, and saying, I have bought this for 500,000.
Yes.
There's absolutely, and I bought 3 of them. So maybe I put $1.5 million in Hunter Biden's bank account.
Yep.
So,
listen, obviously it's ethically a complete disaster, but I love this one section of the Wall Street Journal. I think you really like this, because one of the things that I think that's been missing in this whole story has been, what do art critics actually think of this work of Hunter's? Because we sure we wouldn't be. And our opinions don't matter, but here's what the Wall Street Journal, they've tracked down an art critic who obviously remains anonymous. So one critic characterized Hunter Biden's work as having a hotel art aesthetic. And then another art critic called it generic post-zombie formalism illustration, which I presume that's an actual genre. But anyway,
that might be the art critic having a joke, actually, because I'm not sure post-zombie formalisms are real.
You think post-zombie formalism illustration isn't a thing, Phelim?
I think it may not be, but it's good because you get lots of people pretend to know something about the art world, but but I'm not sure it's real. Anyway, by the way, we should talk about we're going to now talk about art in New York, other art in New York. Isn't that right?
Yes. Well, I kind of think it brings up the whole point, and I think we've made this point a number of times on the podcast about the fact that the left, take art very seriously and take the power of art to get their message across very, very seriously. And a recent New York Times article talked about, and they have a section in the New York Times called Critics' Pick. And the headline in the New York Times was, in Maya Lin's ghost forest, the trees are talking back. So in the heart of Madison Square Park, there is an installation of trees that are already dead, by the way. And they have been at vast expense. This forest of dead trees have been brought, I think, from New Jersey up to New York and, fixed to the ground and created this kind of forest of dead trees. And of course, this is all to tell us more and more and more about climate change.
Yes.
So, here's the opening paragraph of the story. I just have to say, I just love this. On a sultry summer day, the trees across the street from my Bronx apartment are deep in conversation. Trees are, science tells us, social beings and do some of the same things we humans do, at least when we're acting our best.
Like what?
They trade tips about health, news about the weather. They nourish.
So what do they use Facebook to trade tips about health, and are they peddling conspiracy theories? That's what I want to know.
Wait till you hear what the New York Times think that trees do. They support fellow beings too, birds, insects, us. They live sane lives. They generate karma. And here's everything you need to know about the New York Times.
Is that a scientific element?
I believe, oh yes, absolutely. Unlike us in a goes around, comes around universe, the karma we're producing through competitive greed, unthinking waste, and targeted malice. That's what we do, apparently, Phelim. That's what us humans do.
I need to up my game because I don't do any of that.
I know. We're wasted lives, Phelim. And so basically we're killing the world around us. We're at war with the planet. But basically, the story goes on, and it's a really long story, and it goes into the whole fact that she's doing this because she wants to point out about climate change, and she really cares about this, and she says, my affinity has always been towards sculpting the earth. She wrote in her autobiographical book, Boundaries. This impulse has shaped my entire body of work. And so she goes on, and trees are living, breathing, dying. Here's the bit I want to kind of get to, right? So the whole point of this exhibition is to make people really, distraught about climate change and all that. And she says, that the trees presents trees as the living, breathing, dying, relatable beings and karmic companions they are. Karmic companions they are. And you know what it made me think about, Phelim?
Sorry?
You know what it made me think about?
Yes,
it made me think it made me think of this woman who has put together this incredibly expensive, I'm presuming it's a woman, Maya Lin, at vast expense to make us feel about the trees who are really beings. I thought, imagine if she had the same care for babies that are, being murdered every day across America in huge numbers, in vast numbers. Imagine if she put all her artistic care and thought and all her feelings of karma and put it into that. She talks about what we're doing to the earth, and I'm thinking, oh God, she seems to have missed out completely on the most devastating thing that we're doing actually on this earth, which is killing children, And I just thought, if she could for a millisecond put that artistic effort of hers into defending the unborn, well, you wouldn't know what might happen. But there you go. She doesn't seem to manage to notice that.
No, she doesn't. But also it comes to a larger point of the left, and they're relentless using the arts to push their agenda. And the thing that conservatives don't do is use the arts to push their stories. The truth.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing with My Son Hunter.
Correct.
And we've raised almost $1 million now on that, but we still need your help to make it happen. So please, we're gonna be filming in October in Serbia. It's gonna happen, but we need your help to make it happen. So people have been very generous actually in recently, because we've really asked them to step up. I know there's a lot of people out there listening all the time, and we've seen in the YouTube comments and that people saying, I've donated. So please keep donating, give what you can, go to mysonhunter.com, and let's have great art, telling great stories and telling the truth. So.
And just another thing to say there, Phelim, is if you're listening and you've already donated, just try and encourage your friends to donate, because we are the only people making art to tell this story about these Bidens, which is an extraordinary story. And, drip by drip, we're hearing more from the laptop, only from the New York Post, by the way, only from the New York Post and the Mail. Nobody else is covering this story except for us and those two outlets. The mainstream media in general are not covering this story. So please do help us to get this out, because we will, by making this funny, entertaining movie with really talented people, we're going to get this story out to millions and millions of people across the world. Phelim, what's happening with reporters? What's happening with reporters' advice?
I just want to say the Hunter Biden story is a story that's just refusing to die, and we're going to keep it alive. But yes, an article that caught my eye during the week was in Vice News. So angry. Reporters who survived the Capitol riots are still struggling. Many aren't sleeping well. I'm not sleeping like I used to, even to this day, says PBS NewsHour correspondent Lisa Desjardins. There's one thing I hate more than most is journalists telling war stories, right? It's pretty boring and it's self-aggrandizing and all that. But if you're going to tell war stories, have a war.
Go to a war. Yes. Yes.
Don't sit in a room while a bunch of middle-aged people are shouting and banging things outside your door. Like, it's not, the only person who died, by the way, in the Capitol riot was one of the rioters who was shot by a police officer. We were kidnapped in North Dakota by a band of criminals, and they started rocking our car to overturn it. Journalists were shot dead in Northern Ireland. There was a journalist shot, and they tried to kill him in Holland last week.
And by the way, it's kind of extraordinary too, by the way, because some of these same people, covered the BLM riots in the summer, where there were, where buildings were on fire, looting, where people died, a lot of people died in those riots. And they seemed to, bizarrely, they got through those BLM riots unscathed. Nobody had a PTSD from those BLM riots, without getting into even talking about Northern Ireland. It's interesting, right? Yeah. They have a very selective problem, trauma, certain things traumatize them. More than others. And it has nothing to do with violence. It has nothing to do with actual danger. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's actually got to do with things I don't like. It's like that. It's like, what you call it, Sound of Music. These are a few of my favorite things. The PBS reporter, Lisa Desjardins, she probably has a list of, these are this is a list of my hateful things. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
that I don't like.
I can prove they're not traumatized, by the way, because they give interviews for this article, and they're using the riots to make a political point. And if you were that traumatized, you wouldn't care about the politics. Like, for example,
Yeah.
this guy,
Yes.
Bloomberg reporter 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙘𝙤𝙤, he says officers barred the doors. Then the rioters started banging from the outside. When they busted through the windows of the house with flagpoles, he thought they had guns and dove to the floor, thinking the rioters were going to start shooting. Shortly afterwards, he heard a shot outside. What later turned out to be the officer's bullet that killed rioter 𝙈𝙤𝙤 𝙈𝙘𝙤, right? It was traumatizing, he said, but he kept reporting. Did he keep reporting? But there's one piece of reporting he's never done. No one.
Who shot her?
None of these crack beeping journalists have ever said who shot her. And they have never done a minute by minute, second by second breakdown of what led to her being shot. So you're not reporters. We all know that within minutes, we all know the name of police officers who shoot black people.
Yeah.
But these crack journalists, the crackest of the crack journalists, more crack than crack journalists, are unwilling, actually they're not unable, they're unwilling to name the police officer who shot an unarmed woman in the capital. But in the weeks after, Wasson said he experienced symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, short-term irritability that led to fights with his wife over nothing. This went on for nearly a month. Well, maybe you're an asshole, Eric, or whatever it is. Maybe that's what you do. But anyway. Then PBS says, they go back to PBS news reporter Lisa Desjardins. She stayed on the third floor, and when you hear about her traumatic experience, and she started to leave the building, and as she was leaving, many people yelled at her, asking who she was. Her response to diffuse the tension was to yell back, PBS, Sesame Street, Big Bird, right? It mostly worked. Rioters laughed and moved on. God, this was a terrible, hateful group, wasn't it? And by the way, they all hate PBS because it's government funded, but they laughed and moved on. But one man who appeared to be drunk lunged and grabbed her by the shoulder as he tried to take her phone camera, which reminds me, by the way, of the time in the Hammer Museum, the woman from the Hammer Museum grabbed the phone from Magda and assaulted her and made her bleed. Did we report that to the police? Did Magda ask for a day off? Actually, let's show that clip from the end of Crack Nation. Let's show that clip.
As a journalist, would you not be interested in answering a few questions? Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing?
We'll ask you to please leave the property. You're asked to leave. You're asked to leave.
What? She did that to you?
Yeah, well, she like snatched the phone from my head. I had to fight her to get my phone back.
She took it from you?
Yeah, because I was filming at the public event in Hammer Museum, and that's the wound. So there will be blood.
Anyway, Lisa Desjardins. Somebody tried to grab her phone, and then luckily another rioter pulled the guy away. So some drunk guy comes at her, tries to grab her phone, and another guy intervenes, another rioter intervenes. Strange rioter, he intervenes and pulls this guy off the reporter. And then, my favorite example is Bresnahan again. This guy, James Bresnahan, who's a veteran reporter. This proves that he was not traumatized because he is using fake trauma to spread a lie. And he's saying how it's changed the way he's reporting. We're so used to it, the wink and nod lie. You're talking to a member and they lie to you. We just move on to Bresnahan. He's looking back on it. He says he should have covered events like the early day of the Tea Party movement differently. At one early Tea Party rally, he said he heard a protester use the N-word, but he decided against writing about it because he didn't think it represented the broader crowd. I call bull on that. You trying to tell me that these people, they spent years looking for some Tea Party person to use the N-word. They couldn't find it. So then, do you remember what they did? They made it up about John Lewis, that the Tea Party people had used the N-word. And
that's right.
But when you hear that, yes, and Andrew Breitbart, I'm going to get onto this. So then Mr. Bresnan goes on. We used a lot of euphemisms. That was white rage, and we should have covered it as white rage, and we didn't. We covered it as a conservative backlash. They were booing John Lewis, for God's sake. So what he's doing, he's conflating those two. He's saying they used the N-word and they were booing John Lewis. Andrew Breitbart at the time offered $100,000 if anyone could come up with proof, eyewitness or video proof of someone using the N-word. And no one did. And Mr. Bresnahan, now he doesn't say he heard it the John Lewis thing, but he uses, I heard the N-word, and then he uses the name John Lewis, and most people would think, oh, that's the John Lewis incident. But he's being clever that he can say, oh no, I wasn't talking about that. But where, tell me, Mr. Bresnahan, where did you use the N-word, and why haven't you been fired now by your editor for covering that up? And the answer is because you didn't. Because you would have loved to hear that, but the answer is it didn't happen. So, and then Matt Laszlo, not Ted Laszlo, Matt Laszlo, who's a reporter, because Ted Laszlo, I would think, would have done a better job covering the Capitol riot than Matt Laszlo. Matt Laszlo, he works for the Daily Beast, but when you see what he did in the day, he should actually be called the Daily Mouse. It's hilarious. They give themselves names like the Daily Beast. And then there are a bunch of daily mice and men, when you hear them, in my office, that's right, it's my office, the building I love most in the bleeping world. I used to call the Capitol building my girlfriend. I've devoted 15 years of my goddamn life to that building, he said, choking up. Now, instead of being there every day, I'm there once a month. I don't want to be there. Well, Matt Laszlo, maybe you need to get a girlfriend. I mean, what kind of pathetic person calls a building his girlfriend? The Capitol building? I mean, the Capitol, the congressmen have a lower approval rating than, Then he goes, I used to have rapport with many right-wingers, but Josh Hawley. But Josh Hawley led the objection to Biden's victory, i.e. took a political decision, but he's going to punish him. And the answer to that, Matt Laszlo, Mr. Ted Laszlo, is you don't get to make that decision. Your job as a reporter, not to make value judgments about politicians' opinions. The people who make value judgments about politicians' opinions are the voters every 4 years or every 2 years. That's their job. Your job is to report what that politician said. Okay. Oh, a New York Times. Yeah, talking about journalists. Did you see the New York Times tweet? Shouting freedom.
This is incredible. This is incredible. And we're going to put it up on the screen right now. This is a tweet from the New York Times. And it is just extraordinary. Go on ahead there, Phelim.
Yes, well, it's been shouting freedom and other anti-government slogans. Hundreds of Cubans took to the streets in cities around the country on Sunday to protest food and medicine shortages. And it's like, freedom is not an anti-government slogan, just to like New York Times, well, maybe it is in the New York Times, but also Libertad or whatever, Libertad or whatever, how do you say freedom in Spanish? Or as Obama would say in Cuban, how you ever say freedom in Cuban? That freedom is not. It's not. You're not actually protesting food and medicine shortages. You're protesting You're protesting a shortage of freedom.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I saw somebody on Twitter, and I thought it was a really good point, making the point that it'll be very interesting to see Michael Moore's next documentary, and how does he parse the fact that these people are on the streets protesting because of one of the issues is their fabulous free medical system, which is not fabulous at all, which Michael Moore thought was very fabulous. Right. But now that I'm in Ireland, Phelim, I just think maybe our listeners and viewers should find out a little snapshot of what's going on in Ireland, And one of the things that struck me, and it's kind of an extraordinary story, and it's as big a story actually, is that there is this huge story for Ireland that the Irish media have very little curiosity about and are not reporting as the main story in the country. And that's the effort by the G20 to have an agreement to have corporate tax of at least 15%. Everywhere in the world, because what they want to do is to stop the race to the bottom, Yes. So basically, these G20 finance ministers who met recently, they just want to, they're going after those big multinationals and they want to have this minimum of 15%. Now, that seems to read fine, whatever. And if you're sitting in the United States hearing me say this, you're thinking, whatever, right? Except for the fact that you and I, Phelim, know that Ireland has a corporate tax rate of 12.5%. And what that has meant, and this has been in Ireland for quite a while now, I think it was brought in by Charlie Haughey, Fianna Fáil 30 years ago, and made a huge difference because you had companies relocate to Ireland for the sole purpose of taking advantage of this corporate tax. Obviously, there's a young workforce here, people speak English, whatever, but nothing is as attractive as that corporate tax rate. Those companies could go to Canada, they could go to Australia. There's lots of options. But what's really interesting to me is to realize that basically what's going to happen here in Ireland is that they're going to go ahead and agree with all these other countries, and they're going to take away the 12.5% corporate tax rate and go with this minimum 15%, because to be popular and to keep in with all the other boys and girls. And the Irish Times, which is, the despicable version of the New York Times, they ran a story on this recently, and I ran through the story and it's really funny. You can see it there, Phil, because I put it up for you to have a look at. But what I thought was just really funny was they did a story and they reported from a research company who researched the effect. What would the effect be if Ireland lost the 12.5% corporate tax rate? And the really funny thing is that they take 10 paragraphs to get to the story. They take 10 paragraphs, and so the 10th paragraph of the story. So the headline of the story is "Forced change to Ireland's corporate tax rate could trigger migration of activity." First of all, can I just say, and you're the journalist expert around here, Phil, I think that that's a very hard to read headline. Yes. Migration of activity, right? Trigger migration of activity. I'd love them to write English. Wouldn't it be better if they wrote that in English?
Yes, exodus of companies, I think is the...
Yes, there you go. Well done you, Phelim, for translating that for us, right? So basically, I'm not even going to read you the first couple of paragraphs, but I will tell you that you come eventually to paragraph 10. And so this is the company that did this research. The company cites recent research by the Irish Fiscal Advisory Council, whatever, which warned a Pillar 2-like shock involving 5 large multinationals redomiciling their business away from Ireland could result in a direct corporation tax loss of 3 billion. Just to remember, for people listening, Ireland has a population of 5 million. And a direct loss here is about Delta variant. But there's also then this woman, and all the newspapers have loved this. I mean, they've all ran with this. This is front page news here. A 90-year-old woman who died after falling ill with COVID-19 was infected with both the alpha and the beta variants.
Wow.
Now, I know.
Not the alpha and the beta.
She got the alpha and the beta, but God help the poor lady, and she's gone. But I think the fact that a 90-year-old dies of a cold, of a chest infection, it really shouldn't be front page news. And it wasn't even an Irish person; it was somebody in Belgium. So you just have to say they're desperate to continue to terrorize people and to make people very, very scared.
I always remember what Lionel Shriver said. I wish I had the publicist of the COVID vaccine, COVID.
Yes.
That publicist of the COVID, wherever they're paying, wherever the COVID virus is paying and coronavirus is paying, they're doing a great job in getting them publicity, because it's never mind the virus won't die, it's the story that won't die. So you're Guinness. Let's talk about Guinness. You're on the Guinness trail, Anne.
Is Guinness? I thought I was going to make some food, and then I thought, what, next week I'll make something very Irish. But this week I thought, seeing as I've arrived in Ireland, I wanted to bring people news of Guinness, and I decided I would have a pint of Guinness, but it also shows the beautiful pier front at Mullaghmore, where I am now presently residing on my secret project. So, and it's interesting, a couple of facts about Guinness that I want to bring to people's attention. That's kind of interesting. So the Guinness storehouse.
Guinness is a beer or a stout.
Yes, it is a stout, and I'm going to get into all the details of what it is in a moment. But just to tell you, most people around the world have heard of Guinness. The Guinness Storehouse in Dublin is the most visited tourist attraction in Ireland. And I think you and I, Phelim, would both possibly agree that we would tell guests, if we were bringing a group, which maybe one of these days a group might want to come to Ireland with us.
People should write into the YouTube section, would you come on a tour of Ireland with Ann Phelim?
Yes, but basically, can I just say, if we were doing it, we would drink plenty of Guinness, but we wouldn't go to the storehouse. Would that be fair, Phelim?
That would be very fair, Anne. It would be one of the last places we go to, the Guinness storehouse.
Yes. So to tell you then, I think one of the things I want to tell you first, and Matt, we're going to show up on the screen here, the advertising for Guinness for decades has been the slogan, Guinness is good for you. And you'll see the advertising now, beautiful, iconic advertising, by the way, that has gone on for decades and decades and decades. Guinness is good for you. So I thought what I would do for our program, because we care about education and all of that, Phelim, is to ask the question, is Guinness good for you?
Well,
And
I know they used to serve it up until quite recently to people in hospital if you had an operation in hospital.
I was going to just say that. So basically, I did quite a bit of research, and it's quite interesting. The slogan "Guinness is good to you" came about based on market research that people felt good after drinking a pint of the beer, according to the Smithsonian magazine. Guinness also contains iron, and pregnant women were advised to drink it occasionally to boost their intake during the first half of the 20th century. But by the way, that is true.
To boost their what? To boost their what?
To boost their intake of iron.
Wow.
But I'm going to get to all of this in a moment. But I know, and I spoke to a doctor earlier today on this very issue, and that doctor was saying that in the hospital, when she started working in hospital in the 80s, in the 1980s, people were offered in the evenings, some particular patients were offered a sleeping tablet, because they were having sleep issues, or a bottle of Guinness. There was a choice in the hospital. Also, people in Ireland, up until very recently, when they gave blood, they would be offered a glass of Guinness as a kind of reward. And there was this idea about iron, right?
Yeah.
But the thing to know anyway, the interesting thing, so Guinness is very smooth. I really, really enjoy the taste of Guinness. And of course, the snobby thing to say is that you won't get it as good anywhere except for in Ireland.
Yes.
But the reason for the particular creaminess is because of a thing called nitrogenization, which was invented by Guinness, which pairs nitrogen gas and carbon dioxide. And that's where the velvety texture comes from. So here's the things that do make Guinness healthy. It has antioxidants, which is a huge thing, obviously. And I'm just going to run through these. It has iron. Now, the truth is it has 0.3 mgs of iron, which is not much. But if you want a bit of iron, whatever, right?
It helps.
It's also, interestingly enough, from a calorific point of view, it is actually considered a light beer. I found this really interesting when I looked this up today. So it's actually 210 calories, which is still lighter than Bud Light. Isn't that interesting? It has 15 more calories than Bud Light. Sorry, only 15 calories more than Bud Light, and 5 calories more than the same amount of skim milk. Now, there you go. It's good for your bones. This is another claim people make about it. Now, the company themselves, just to know, Guinness themselves make no health. They make no health claims. And I looked on their website today just to make sure about that, but they don't. So beer contains a plant hormone called phytoestrogen. Apparently, it's the key building tool for bones and all of that. All very positive. Another thing about Guinness that you mightn't have known is it's quite low in alcohol. So most beer is 5% and Guinness is 4.2%. And other little things, apparently it's an anti-inflammatory. But another thing that I thought was very good, because I was told I had a little bit of bad cholesterol lately, and it lowers bad cholesterol. So Phelim, I know you'd want me to have a pint of beer every day, just to try to counteract any bad cholesterol. And that's kind of it, basically. Somebody says that it actually is a good thing to have to hydrate after a workout. I think that's a little unlikely. But in terms of the... Go on.
No, I remember...
I was going to say, just go on.
There was a documentary back when that fraudster, who was the fraudster who did Super Size Me, Magda?
Oh, yes.
McDonald's.
Spurlock.
Morgan Spurlock. Yeah, he did, 30 days eating only McDonald's. Remember a guy did... I spent a week in Ireland drinking only Guinness for 7 days. And it's a great idea for a documentary, but I think, most people who drink Guinness for a day end up being pretty boring. And when you drink it for 7 days, you become super boring. I think.
Yes.
I think the documentary was a great concept, but it failed in the execution. That's it. So what were you going to say, Anne?
I was going to just to say this, to kind of help people to understand the taste. So I do think it's a really lovely taste. The taste of Guinness. It's on the bitter side. But it's malty, and it's made obviously with hops, and it's a really beautiful. And the barley that's in it is roasted. It's a rich, sweet, bitter, very creamy texture. and really, really nice. And it's I'd highly recommend it. And I do think it does taste better here, but that probably is a romantic notion of my own. It's a very nice drink, and perhaps some of our listeners will have a pint of Guinness with us someday over here.
Yes. I want to thank everyone for listening. We also want to thank everyone for donating to My Son Hunter. Go to mysonhunter.com. Please donate more. Please let us help make this happen. And we're going to be making big announcements about that film very soon. So until next week, all the best.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.